What your favorite plant reveals. Here's something even more telling, tied to the specific plant you've chosen to keep close. Nothing here is random. Pay attention to what you love, because it reveals who you are. An affinity for hardy plants, delicate ones, or slow-growing ones often reflects qualities the spirit needed to develop. Resilience, patience, quiet protection, or inner strength. Have you noticed which kind of plant pulls at you the most? It's not by accident. If you love cacti, maybe your soul learned to endure in harsh, emotionally difficult environments. If you love ferns, maybe your soul craves emotional gentleness, constant warmth. If you love succulents, maybe your soul learned to store strength for hard seasons ahead. Stop for a moment and think, what's your favorite plant? It's a spiritual mirror. It shows you something about who you are and what you came here to learn. Some people are drawn to plants that bloom only once a year, souls who've learned that not every reward comes quickly, that waiting is part of the beauty. Others love climbing vines that need support to grow, perhaps souls learning about interdependence, about accepting help without shame. And some love ancient, painfully slow-growing trees, souls who understand that true greatness isn't built in one lifetime, but across many. Planting as an act of faith. Listen to this next part with your heart. To plant something is to act in the present while trusting the future, exactly the way a spirit returns to life again and again. You place a seed in the ground with no guarantee it will sprout. You care for it every day without knowing if it will bloom. You wait without demanding. Does that remind you of anything? Anyone who loves plants demonstrates, consciously or not, trust in something larger, even without immediate certainty. It shows faith. It shows patience. It shows acceptance of mystery. And that, my friend, is spirituality in motion. Not memorized belief, but daily practice. Every time you plant something, you're telling the universe, I trust, I wait, I accept the timing that isn't mine to control. And that transforms the spirit more than any recited prayer ever could. Planting a tree that will only bear fruit long after you're gone is considered one of the most spiritual acts there is. It's thinking of someone else, of the future, of the continuity of life. It's understanding that you're just one link in an endless chain of creation. Anyone who plants knowing they may never see the full result is practicing detachment in its purest form. Serving without expecting recognition, loving without needing to witness that love return. Roots in the earth, reaching for the light. Plants unite matter and life in a way you can actually see. They are body and spirit at once, roots in the ground, leaves reaching for the sky. And you, in connecting with them, are searching for that same balance, aren't you? You're not someone who believes only in what can be touched, and you're not a dreamer disconnected from reality either. You want your feet on the ground and your heart toward the light. That's exactly what plants teach. Root deeply, but always grow toward the light. Maybe you've always felt torn between two worlds, the spiritual and the material, the sensitive and the practical, the dream and the daily grind. But now you understand it isn't division, it's integration. It's what plants do naturally, and what your spirit came here to learn. Many people suffer because they try to be only spiritual, denying the body and the material world, or only material, denying the soul and the unseen. Plants show the middle path. They need the earth to hold them, water to nourish them, but they die without light from above. It's the perfect balance between what belongs to the world and what belongs to the sacred, living fully within the world, without being consumed by it, rooted but reaching upward. For sensitive souls and quiet healers, here's something that will resonate deeply with anyone who feels things intensely. Many people developing spiritual sensitivity describe intense emotional swings. A common piece of guidance: grow a garden. It doesn't need to be big. One small pot is enough. Years later, many come back grateful, saying their plants brought a stability nothing else could offer. Many sensitive people report greater emotional steadiness when they live surrounded by greenery. Green spaces are said to help harmonize the body's energy centers, especially around the heart. Plants emit a gentle vibration that soothes that center, allowing a sensitive person to feel fewer emotional swings and greater control over what they perceive. It's as if plants act like an antenna of balance, drawing in heavy excess energy and returning something lighter, renewed, healing. If you're sensitive, if you pick up on energy easily, your plants are quiet allies. People who absorb everything around them, other people's pain, anguish, unseen presences, without any filter, often find that plants act like a lightning rod, draining off the excess energy they absorb and preventing overload, like a transformer regulating voltage. Without it, the system burns out. With it, everything runs in harmony. That's part of why so many sensitive people surround themselves with plants. It isn't decoration, it's quiet protection. What real richness looks like. There's a kind of spiritual maturity that values the essential over the excessive. Mature souls don't need to show off. They don't need to prove anything. They don't hoard out of fear. A love for plants often reflects exactly that. Detachment from excess, and a pull toward what is simple, alive, and true. Not accumulation, but presence. Life pulsing quietly. Anyone who loves plants doesn't need much to feel content. Just earth, water, and light. And to an evolved spirit, that's more than enough. That's true abundance. Notice how different that is from the noise out there, the consumerism, the rush, the desperate chase to have more, be more, appear more. Your plants teach the opposite. They teach that less is more, that what matters most is often invisible to a purely material eye. There's a story of highly evolved spirits who, when reflecting on past lives, spoke with nostalgia, not of palaces or riches, but of a simple garden they once tended, not wealth, but small patches of earth where they planted love and harvested peace. Nothing we accumulated stayed with us, they said, but the joy of watching a seed sprout that crossed over with us. That's why a love for plants is often a sign of an experienced soul, one that already understands happiness can't be bought or stockpiled. It's cultivated day after day in small acts of care, a daily practice for the soul. Caring for plants helps a person reset emotionally. It functions as a kind of everyday spiritual hygiene. The same way we bathe to cleanse the body, tending plants cleanses the soul, clears the excess, rebalances what's out of order, reorganizes what's scattered. It's self-care that doesn't require a course, a guru, or money. It only asks for the willingness to be present with something living that depends on you, and that alone is healing. Every time you water, prune, and observe, you're practicing conscious presence. You're saying no to mental chaos. You're choosing peace. Minor spiritual disturbances and negative influences are often described as settling in precisely when a person's energy is disorganized, the way a messy house tends to attract clutter. The simple act of tending plants works like daily spiritual tidying. You organize your thoughts, you quiet your emotions, you clear stagnant energy. It's active meditation, prayer in motion. Therapy without a therapist, just you, the earth, the water, and the reorganizing silence that heals more than 1,000 words ever could. The lesson hidden in every leaf. And now, the truth this entire reflection has been building toward. Many souls learn through plants what they once needed to learn about themselves, how to respect limits, how to accept timing, how to nurture with consistency, and how to allow growth. Water too much, the plant dies. Water too little, it dies. Too much sun, it burns. Too much shade, it withers. Those same lessons apply to the spirit. Caring for plants is practice for caring for yourself. And when you learn to properly care for a plant, you learn to properly care for you too, without excess, without neglect, in balance. That's why your connection to plants runs so deep. It isn't a hobby. It isn't a distraction. It's spiritual therapy. It's a lesson carried across lifetimes. It's a memory of who you were and preparation for who you're becoming. Now it makes sense, doesn't it? Now you understand why you always felt this way. Some souls are said to choose, before returning to this life, experiences with plants specifically to relearn the self-respect they lost in another lifetime, souls who gave themselves away for others, who wore themselves out completely, who never learned how to say no. Those souls need to relearn boundaries. And the plant teaches exactly that. Care for me, but don't drown me. Give me light, but don't burn me. Love me, but respect my timing. That's the lesson you needed to learn about yourself, quietly disguised as gardening, offered through the simple mercy of a green leaf. The full truth. So here it is, the full truth. Loving plants isn't only an aesthetic preference or a passing hobby, dear friend. It can be the spirit searching for balance, for silence, for reconnection with the natural laws of life that the modern world tried to erase. Maybe in caring for a plant, the spirit is slowly remembering how to care for itself. Maybe it's recovering old memories of a time when it lived closer to the earth, closer to the sacred. Plants don't save us, but they remind us of something essential, that life is simple, that love is quiet, that growth can't be forced, and that in the end, everything we truly need is already within reach: light, water, earth, and patience. If you've made it this far, it wasn't by accident. If you're hearing this right now, it's because your spirit needed to hear it. Because you were looking for confirmation of something you've always felt but could never quite explain. And I'm telling you, it's all right. What you feel is real. What you experience is sacred. What you do when you care for your plants is quiet spiritual work. If you've made it to this point, thank you truly for letting this message reach something deep inside you. Look at your plants now with new eyes, seeing them not just as decoration, but as quiet spiritual companions. And if you don't have any plants yet, maybe this is the sign you've been waiting for. You don't need a big garden, just one small pot, one seed, one intention. The spirit will recognize it, and healing will begin. Blessed soul, greetings. May peace surround your heart in this sacred moment of listening. Today, we're going to talk about something few people fully understand, but that your spirit has recognized all along. Have you ever felt strangely at peace near a plant? Have you noticed you care for them with a tenderness you can't always explain? This isn't chance. It isn't only sensitivity. And it's not something that can be explained by the material world alone. There's a truth behind this connection, and once you understand it, you'll never look at a plant the same way again. I know you've lived this. Maybe you have a favorite plant at home. Maybe you feel the urge to touch the leaves when you walk through a garden. Maybe you feel an unexplainable sadness when a plant dies, and you've never told anyone because you thought no one would understand. But I'm telling you now, dear friend, what you feel is real. It's spiritual memory. It's recognition of something that comes from long before this life. Before we continue, I want to invite you into a small gesture of light. If you feel this deep connection to plants, write the word root in the comments, because by the end of this you'll understand that this affinity isn't just a preference, it's a calling. Something your soul chose before you were even born. A quiet place to breathe. There's a story often told of a woman who once approached a well-known spiritual counselor after a talk, visibly troubled. She said she couldn't stand being in crowded places, that her chest would tighten, that voices seemed to invade her mind. "But when I'm in my garden," she said through tears, "it's like everything goes quiet. It's like I can finally breathe." He held her hand gently and answered, "You're not losing your mind. You're simply too sensitive to the heaviness people carry." And plants? Plants are nature's own filters. Have you lived something like that? That sense that the world feels too heavy, but near a plant you finally get to rest? In this understanding, nature is one of the places where energy settles into its most balanced state. When you're near a plant, your spirit recognizes that clean vibration, free from the density of restless human thought. Plants don't lie, they don't judge, they don't carry old wounds, they simply are. And being near them is like returning home on a vibrational level. It's like feeling creation breathe in its purest form. Open ground, greenery, the natural world itself, these are described as reservoirs of vital energy. In places untouched by too much human interference, that energy is said to move in harmony. That's why so many people describe instant relief just from stepping into a garden or leaning against a tree. It isn't suggestion. It's something real happening beneath the surface. The subtle body, worn down by the discord of city life, finds in plants a neutral field where it can finally reorganize itself. It's like stepping out of a noisy room into a silent one. The body relaxes, breathing steadies. Something inside quietly exhales. And here's what's remarkable. People who feel this aren't weak. They're sensitive receivers, tuned differently than most. A love that never betrays. Just as in ordinary psychology, this spiritual understanding teaches that the spirit longs for stability, and plants offer exactly that: steady, dependable presence. You care, they respond. You water, they grow. You prune, they bloom. There's no betrayal, no ingratitude, no pretending. Maybe you've been betrayed by people you loved. Maybe you cared for someone who eventually left you behind. Maybe you gave love and received indifference in return. I know that pain is familiar to you. For souls who have lived through turbulent emotional environments, in this life or in others, the predictable rhythm of plant life creates a deep sense of shelter. It's as if, in caring for a plant, the spirit is quietly saying, "Here, I have something I can trust. Here I'm building something that won't hurt me." That's the quiet security so many of us are searching for. A silent anchor that keeps us steady while we move through inner storms. Broken trust needs to be rebuilt slowly, and plants offer exactly that kind of safe space for the spirit to relearn how to trust. Every new sprout, every unfolding leaf, is a small but real promise kept. And a wounded spirit needs those small promises to believe again that not everything disappoints, that not everything dies, that it's still worth putting love into something living. A memory older than this life. There's a story of a boy who, by the age of 5, already knew the name of every medicinal herb his grandmother grew. No one had taught him. He simply knew. He'd look at a plant and say, "This one is for stomach pain. This one is for fever." His parents found it strange. His grandmother just smiled and said, "This child was a healer before." Have you ever stopped to wonder why you know things about plants that no one ever taught you? Why you're drawn to a certain kind of greenery? Why sometimes you look at a tree and feel an inexplicable longing? That isn't imagination. That's spiritual memory. Some souls carry experiences from a simpler life, tied to the land, to cultivating the earth. Maybe you were once a farmer in another life. Maybe you lived in a quiet monastery, tending herbs. Maybe you were someone who understood the secrets of leaves and roots. Those memories don't disappear. They stay recorded in the spirit. And when, in this life, you find yourself drawn to a plant, a garden, a small patch of earth, it isn't a new interest. It's an old recognition. It's the soul saying, "I've been here before. I've loved this before." You always knew that on some level, didn't you? You always sensed there was something larger behind this connection. Some children show inexplicable abilities with plants. They know when to water just by touching the soil. They recognize species they've never seen before. They sense when a plant is unwell. These are described as gifts carried over from other lifetimes, abilities developed across centuries that return now as natural instincts, talents no school ever taught, but the soul never forgot. No judgment, no conditions. Now here's one of the most freeing truths in all of this. Plants don't judge. They don't demand complicated emotional exchanges. You don't have to explain yourself to a plant. You don't have to justify, defend, or prove you're good enough. Haven't you grown tired of always having to explain what you feel? Haven't you exhausted yourself trying to make people understand you? Haven't you felt like you give and receive nothing back? For sensitive souls, or those developing spiritual gifts, spending time with plants offers real rest. It's an exchange with no wear and tear. You give water, it gives oxygen. You give attention, it gives beauty. You give patience, it gives growth. There's no emotional debt, no manipulation, no suffocating expectation. Just simple, honest, mutual presence. That's rare. That's precious. That's healing for anyone who spends their days around people who drain their energy without even realizing it. Exhausted, intuitive people often describe the same complaint. I can't keep absorbing everyone else's pain, their overwhelming emotions, thoughts that aren't even mine. And the answer often given is simple. Grow a garden, dear friend, because plants don't project suffering onto you. They only receive your care and give life back. It's a balanced exchange, where you give consciously and receive visibly, without the invisible weight so many human relationships carry. The quiet that heals. There's something else, a secret held in the silence of plants that few people ever notice. Too much stimulation throws the subtle body out of balance. We live in an age of constant noise, information, demands, voices, opinions, artificial light, mechanical sound. The spirit wasn't built for that. It was built for harmony, for peace, for the natural rhythm of creation. So what happens when you're near a plant? Contact with them slows down racing thoughts, regulates emotion, and allows the spiritual field of an incarnate soul to reorganize itself naturally. It's like resetting a clock that's fallen out of time. Not magic, vibrational alignment. The subtle body is often compared to a sponge, absorbing everything around it, good and bad. In a noisy city, it becomes soaked in dissonant vibration, like a sponge dropped in dirty water. But step into a space filled with plants, and it's as if that sponge is gently wrung out and rinsed clean. The heaviness drains away, lightness returns, and the spirit can finally breathe in its own rhythm again, without forcing anything, without pretending, simply being. There's a story of a man who once asked, anxious and impatient, how quickly he could develop spiritual gifts. "I want to be useful now," he said. He was led out to a small garden and shown a fruit tree. "See that tree? It took 15 years to bear its first fruit. But when it finally did, it fed dozens of people. Nothing was rushed. Only time allowed it to happen." The man understood. He came back years later, calmer, and said, "I learned from my plants." Anyone who loves plants ends up learning, almost without noticing, the spiritual laws of time and growth. Nothing grows through force. Everything follows its own rhythm. You can overwater a plant, but it won't grow faster. You can force a flower open, but it will wilt before its time. Haven't you tried to force things in your own life? Tried to rush a process, skip a step, harvest before it was ready? Sensitive souls recognize this intuitively. In caring for a plant, they come to understand they can't force their own spiritual growth either. They can't rush forgiveness. They can't skip the stages of healing. Everything has its season, and that's one of the deepest lessons plants teach without saying a single word. Spiritual impatience is often described as one of the greatest blocks to growth. We want to become wise or whole overnight, forgetting that even the most enlightened teachers spent years quietly preparing before their work began. Plants teach us that sacred patience. There's a time to plant, a time to water, a time to prune, and a time to harvest. Skipping a step doesn't speed anything up. It only compromises what comes next, and the spirit that learns this from its plants also learns to respect the seasons of its own soul. Presence without effort. Have you ever spent money on therapy trying to find balance? Searched outside yourself for something that was always within reach? Caring for plants works as a spontaneous form of alignment. It's a simple practice that helps a person step out of a restless mind and into a state of presence. When you care for a plant, you're here, now. Not thinking about the past, not worrying about the future, just watering, pruning, observing. Present. And presence is the natural state of an evolved spirit. That's where peace lives. That's where the sacred resides. So caring for plants isn't wasted time. It's an investment in natural emotional balance. It's preventive medicine for the soul. It's therapy that asks for nothing but patience and love. Maybe you're realizing right now that your plants were never just decoration. They've always been your quiet companions in healing. Many modern emotional struggles, anxiety, panic, a persistent sense of disconnection are often linked to humanity's drift away from nature. When you care for a plant, you're literally reconnecting circuits that got switched off by the artificial pace of city life. It's like plugging something back in. The energy starts flowing again. The system starts working. and that unexplainable emptiness begins to fill with something real, alive, pulsing. Why you feel so responsible for them? Now here's something deeper. I need to share carefully. Many souls carry, from early on, a sense of responsibility toward others, toward family, toward causes bigger than themselves. That's you, isn't it? Always taking care of everyone else, always worried, always putting other people's needs before your own. But that caretaking energy doesn't always find a healthy place to go. Sometimes you care for people until you're depleted. Sometimes you care for people who don't want to be cared for, and it leaves you frustrated. And this is where plants become such a gift. They become a channel where that caretaking energy can flow without emotional overload. You care for it, and it genuinely needs you. You care for it, and it thanks you by growing. You care for it, and it never abandons you out of jealousy, never criticizes your mistakes, never punishes your imperfection. It's pure care, love without debt, responsibility without guilt. That's freeing for anyone who carries the weight of caring too much for others. It's freeing for anyone who forgot how to care for themselves. Grieving parents and widowed partners who return to caring for plants often recover from loss more quickly. Why? Because caretaking energy, when it has nowhere to go, turns inward and becomes guilt, becomes emptiness. But when it finds a receiver, a plant, a garden, that energy starts flowing again, fulfilling its loving nature without demanding an emotional return a wounded heart isn't ready to give.